comes as Kokomo farmer Kent Chisholm is preparing to plant soybeans in his field. He and others are closely watching what's happening with exports.
China has set their sights on a massive slice of America's heartland, to the tune of a staggering $34 billion in U.S. farmland. China's bold moves have the entire farming community in the U.S. buzzing with concern. And let me tell you, the implications are nothing to sneeze at. Will this lead to a shift in control over the U.S. food supply? Will American farmers be able to compete against the deep pockets of China's state-backed farmland buys? And how is it going to affect you and me? The calm before the storm. In the rolling plains of the American Midwest, where the horizon seems to stretch infinitely, generations of farmers have cultivated the land, turning soil into sustenance and sustenance into prosperity. For decades, the rhythm of planting and harvesting millions of acres of soybeans and corn has not only sustained family farms, but also fueled economic growth throughout rural America. Central to this prosperity is a robust export market, particularly the lucrative trade relationship with China. As the world's most populous country and largest importer of agricultural commodities, China has provided a critical outlet for American produce, especially soybeans, which serve as a staple in animal feed and a key ingredient in countless food products. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has consistently highlighted soybeans as a leading export product, with billions of dollars worth of this crop shipped to Chinese ports annually. This trade is not mere serendipity. It represents a carefully cultivated economic relationship where supply meets staggering demand, knitting the two nations' economies together through shared interests. American farmers from Iowa to Ohio have relied on this symbiotic exchange to sustain operations. Investments in agricultural technology and innovations have enabled them to meet China's vast demand efficiently, thus reinforcing the economic backbone of rural communities. In these communities, the impact of this trade relationship extends beyond the farm gates. The constant flow of Chinese purchases has driven economic activities that go beyond agriculture. Machinery dealers, seed suppliers, and transportation companies thrive, while rural schools and healthcare facilities benefit from the business their patrons can afford to provide. Local economies are buoyed by the steady cash inflow, creating a ripple effect that elevates the standard of living across these areas. Farmers like John Thompson, whose family has farmed their Iowa land for over a century, have experienced firsthand how a global market presence can foster local prosperity. Yet, as secure as this foundation appears, the dependency on a single market poses significant risks. The very success of farming operations becomes intertwined with the stability of international relations and foreign market policies. This dependency creates an unsettling vulnerability, one that lurks beneath the surface of routine agricultural operations: the ties that bind. The origins of this agricultural partnership date back several decades, developing alongside China's rapid industrialization and urban expansion. As China evolved into an economic powerhouse, its demand for food and agricultural imports surged. The United States, with its vast arable land and advanced farming techniques, was a natural partner, supplying the burgeoning Chinese middle class with essential commodities. This partnership quickly transformed into an economic lifeline for American farmers, whose success stories became part of larger narratives about globalization and market integration. Trade agreements negotiated over the years have cemented this relationship, fostering a complex web of interdependence that ties two distant nations through necessity and opportunity. For American farmers, the Chinese market represents not just a portion of their sales, but a significant percentage of their revenue streams. Products that leave American shores bound for China do not merely represent trade volumes, they symbolize the fruits of a year's labor and investment for thousands of farming families. Beyond the financial metrics, there lies a deeper, more personal connection to this trade exchange. Farming communities have flourished thanks to the jobs and economic stability that these exports ensure. Infrastructure improvements, new roads, school renovations, and healthcare enhancements have been possible due to the funding derived from agricultural prosperity. Farming families have enhanced their operations through reinvestments in machinery, technology, and sustainability practices, further entrenching their capacity to meet foreign demand. But at the heart of every decision to sow a new crop lies an implicit trust in the global market's stability. For farmers like Emily Carter in Nebraska, this trust is akin to a pact. Their commitment to produce hinges on the assured demand from markets like China. It's a relationship that affects not only commercial strategies, but also shapes personal and community lifestyles. The quiet threat. Despite the optimistic environment fostered by steady trade, subtle shifts have begun shaking the foundation of this agricultural bedrock. Over recent years, growing geopolitical tensions and evolving economic strategies have introduced a note of caution among stakeholders. China's strategic maneuvers to diversify its soybean procurement, develop alternative trade partners, and potentially reduce its dependency on American imports have sowed seeds of apprehension across American farmlands. The complexity of international trade means that this anxiety is not merely reactive but anticipatory. The possibility of changes in trade policies and realignments in global economic strategies stirs unease among farmers. They recognize that their future income may be influenced less by weather patterns or yield per acre statistics, and more by diplomatic negotiations and economic posturing thousands of miles away. For example, as tensions flare over tariffs and trade regulations, farmers like Carlos Mendoza from Texas examine projections and market analytics as carefully as they do soil conditions. These agricultural stewards must now navigate an environment where business decisions hinge not just on agricultural expertise, but an understanding of global economic indicators and political climates. The US-China trade relationship, once a source of unshakable confidence, now stands as a potential point of vulnerability, demanding that farmers remain ever vigilant to emerging shifts. Amidst this precarious situation, the question of sustainability emerges, not merely in terms of ecological practices, but the sustainability of the economic models upon which these farmers have long relied. This necessity for adaptation and foresight becomes the new reality as American agriculture braces for an uncertain future. The trade war begins. The announcement from China about significantly reducing agricultural imports from the United States arrived with the quiet ripple of a stone dropped into a vast pond. Its effects, however, would soon prove to be seismic. For American farmers, particularly those growing soybeans and corn, this news was akin to an earthquake shaking the foundations of their livelihoods. The markets responded swiftly. Within hours, the prices for these staple crops, already under pressure from oversupply, plunged to new depths. For farmers across the Midwest, such as those in Decatur, Illinois, a city fashioned and sustained by its deep agricultural roots, the mood turned from buoyant optimism to a stark sense of dread. This shift was about more than economics. It was about identity, security, and survival. Amidst the sprawling fields, farmers like John Thompson found themselves at a crossroads. The soybean crop that he had nurtured from seed to harvest now faced a perilous uncertainty. With warehouses filled with unsold produce, the once steady rhythm of farm life was thrown into disarray. Contracts that had secured financial stability for the year were abruptly rescinded or left unfulfilled, leaving a tangible void where security once resided. The economic impact spread like wildfire, affecting not only farmers but also the myriad businesses reliant upon them. John's local community bank, once a beacon of support, faced its challenges as loan defaults and credit risks surged. In parallel, the economic tremors resonated deeply through towns like Decatur, known as Soybean City. Here, the loss was multifaceted. Local equipment dealers saw their sales plummet as farmers hesitated to invest in new machinery amidst financial uncertainty. The diner at the heart of the town square, a fixture for early morning coffee and conversation among farmers, observed quieter mornings as patrons tightened their belts. Schools, relying on tax revenues from prosperous times, started planning for lean years that could affect education quality and access. Moreover, the human stories were profound. Families like Emily Carter's in Nebraska sat around dinner tables, faced with difficult choices. Could they afford the seeds, fertilizers, and labor necessary for next season's crops? Was it time to mortgage part of the family land to ride out the storm? This tension and uncertainty rippled through the next generation of potential farmers who saw promises of a stable future dimming. College students majoring in agriculture reconsidered their career paths, anticipating limited opportunities back home. The ripple effect. The ramifications extended beyond immediate economics into the very fabric of rural community life. Services that relied on farm income, like local repair shops for farm equipment and trucking firms transporting produce, faced significant slowdowns. Job loss in these auxiliary sectors compounded the direct impact on farmers, leading to increased unemployment rates in rural areas compared to urban centers. This economic downturn fed into a cycle where reduced income led to constrained local spending, further boxing in community businesses. Socially, the changes were just as marked. Rural towns faced the stark potentiality of ghost town futures, a term resonating with historical depopulation when economic lifelines were cut. School enrollments dwindled as younger families moved to cities seeking more stable environments and opportunities. A demographic shift loomed, threatening to alter the traditional structure and heritage of rural communities. Meanwhile, the psychological toll on remaining residents grew. Support networks took on new importance as community gatherings became more than social. They were inflection points for collective resilience and communal problem solving. Adaptation and endurance. Amidst adversity, ingenuity and resourcefulness began to surface, hallmark traits of American farmers through the ages. Governmental bodies, recognizing the potential for widespread economic distress, rushed to provide a safety net. Federal aid, reminiscent of relief efforts from agricultural crises past, began being deployed in the form of subsidies and emergency loans. However, the response was mixed. While some farmers welcomed it as a lifeline capable of reaching through to stability, others lamented it as a temporary patch rather than a sustainable solution. Beyond government intervention, grassroots innovation began to light a path forward. In many cases, farmers started organizing deeper locally, forming coalitions to rely less on international markets. Cooperatives emerged not merely as financial reactions to the crisis, but as community-focused initiatives striving for new self-reliance paradigms. Farmers explored diversifying their crop offerings, considering specialty crops such as organic vegetables or pulses that might appeal to niche domestic markets or even other countries less affected by trade ravines. Despite the daunting challenge posed by these geopolitical shifts, the resilience intrinsic to farming communities began to reflect a tempered hope. Adaptation rather than capitulation became a guiding principle. As the ripples of this conflict redefined traditional practices, they also paved the way for potential transformations in agriculture's operational and philosophical underpinnings. The narrative of struggle intertwined with triumph, a legacy more potent than any one single economic quartile. For visionaries like Carlos Mendoza in Texas, these challenges were opportunities masked as obstacles. By adopting precision agriculture technologies and collaborating with local tech companies, Carlos found new efficiencies that allowed him to lower input costs and diversify his output, appealing to broader markets while maintaining ecological sustainability. Rising South American competitors. In the wake of China's strategic withdrawal from American agricultural imports, the global agricultural landscape began to shift dramatically. It was an opening perfectly timed for South American countries, notably Brazil and Argentina, which quickly seized the opportunity to expand their already significant agricultural presence in international markets. Brazil's expansive croplands and favorable climate allowed for a rapid increase in soybean production, turning the country into the new go-to source for Chinese buyers eager to diversify away from U.S. dependence. The transformation was well underway, aided by years of investment in agricultural infrastructure and technology. Brazil's dominance in global agriculture has not occurred overnight, but rather through strategic improvements in supply chain logistics, favorable government policies, and technological adoption that have enhanced productivity. With China turning its purchasing power southward, the windfall for these countries underlined a geographic and economic pivot that had long been brewing beneath the surface. Argentinian farmers, too, found themselves buoyed by the shifting tides. As global demand increased, they saw higher profitability and invested in expanding cultivation areas, further fortifying their international positions. These developments not only altered trade balances, but also highlighted the increasing importance of global adaptability in agricultural practices. For American farmers, grappling with this increased competition meant reassessing their operational strategies and market targets. The technological divide. As Brazil and Argentina thrived on their agricultural export boom, the technological divide between US and South American farming practices became more apparent. South American countries benefited significantly from technological agility, leveraging open-source farming technologies and rapidly adapting to market needs without the confines of restrictive contracts seen in some areas of US agriculture. American farmers often faced limitations imposed by proprietary technologies, which were both financially and operationally challenging. The right to repair movement, spearheaded by frustrated farmers in the United States, sought to challenge these restrictions, advocating for more freedom to repair and modify their machinery. These calls for greater control over their agricultural tools echoed throughout the industry, revealing fundamental disparities in tech accessibility and adaptability between North and South American agricultural practices. This chasm extended extended beyond machinery to include knowledge access and sharing. The layered complexity of intellectual property rights in the United States sometimes stifled innovation or necessitated higher costs for adoption. In contrast, Brazilian and Argentinian farmers often enjoyed flexible, collaborative environments that encouraged experimentation and rapid technological integration. This disparity highlighted the need for policy revisions and industry adaptations within the U.S. to empower local farmers with the tools needed to remain competitive globally. Advocacy for change. In response to these mounting challenges, American farmers began to organize. From grassroots networks to national farming organizations, there was a concerted effort to advocate for industry reforms that aligned with sustainable and equitable growth ideals. Farmers engaged policymakers directly, lobbying for legislative support that would empower the agricultural sector through technological autonomy and market access diversification. One of the most resonant campaigns was the push for the right to repair, which united farmers across states. Their collective voice underscored the essential nature of self-sufficiency in their operations. The movement sought to dismantle the barriers imposed by proprietary technology agreements, demanding the freedom to innovate, repair, and adapt their machinery as needed. Furthermore, expanded cooperation with technology developers was promoted to ensure that agricultural technologies evolved in tandem with real-world farm needs. Through collaborations with universities and tech startups, American farmers aimed to build a new ecosystem of agricultural innovation, one rooted in flexibility and adaptability. This notion of change underscored a strategic shift from dependency to diversification, reflecting an industry-wide realization of the need for systemic evolution in response to mounting global pressures. While challenges stemming from China's market shift bring short-term disruptions, they are simultaneously catalysts for transformative growth. These changes push the boundaries of traditional practices, encouraging innovations that promise more sustainable and self-sufficient futures. For example, farmers like Carlos Mendoza, who had spent time collaborating with local tech innovators, started to see the fruits of these efforts. Precision farming technologies, which were once out of reach, began to become more accessible, resulting in cost reductions and yield improvements. This technological empowerment paved the way for a new era of farming efficiency and sustainability, embraced not as a luxury, but as a necessity to thrive in an ever-evolving global market. Communities rallied around these innovations, forging a renewed sense of purpose and optimism despite past hardships. With each pivot towards greater innovation and independence, American farmers continued to redefine their roles on the global stage. As they stepped towards a future rich with opportunity and challenge, their legacy became intertwined with the enduring narrative of adaptation in the face of adversity. Political pressures mount. As the dust began to settle on the immediate economic impacts of China's strategic withdrawal from U.S. agricultural markets, the political dimensions of the crisis became increasingly apparent. The locus of the issue had shifted from the fields of American farmlands to the halls of political power both domestically and abroad. At the heart of this shift was the recognition that resolving the challenges faced by American agriculture required more than just resilience from farmers. It needed decisive action from policymakers. In Washington, political leaders found themselves under intense pressure to address the fallout from China's market shifts. Congressional hearings became arenas for scrutinizing past trade policies and debating future strategies. Lawmakers from rural states, representing their constituencies' economic hardships, mounted vigorous defense for immediate interventions and long-term strategies. Their advocacy was rooted in the need to not only cushion farmers from the immediate impacts, but to also pave new pathways for success in an increasingly competitive marketplace. The administration responded with a multifaceted approach, leveraging trade negotiations, federal aid, and policy reforms aimed at bolstering the domestic agricultural industry. Tariffs and trade barriers became tools of leverage used in attempts to negotiate fairer conditions for American exports. Meanwhile, internally, discussions centered around redefining agricultural strategies to restore domestic prosperity and economic stability. Global perspectives on food security. On the international stage, the situation acted as a catalyst for extensive diplomatic engagements. Food security emerged as a pressing global issue as nations recognized the interconnected nature of agricultural economies. In multilateral forums such as the World Trade Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization, discussions about the need for stable agricultural markets and ensuring food security intensified. nations around the world began to scrutinize and reassess their agricultural dependencies. For China, diversifying import sources meant strengthening ties with South America, but also exploring other potential partners around the globe. For US allies and trade partners, the shift highlighted the importance of collaboration, prompting renewed interest in regional trade agreements aimed at creating secure and resilient supply chains. Global discussions also pivoted towards sustainable agricultural practices and technological innovation as means to mitigate future disruptions. Policymakers emphasized the importance of investing in agricultural resilience, exploring avenues for cooperation in research and development, and encouraging sustainable practices that aligned economic growth with environmental stewardship. Farming seismic shift. The tectonic plates of the global economy have shifted, and the tremors are being felt in the heartland of America, as international trade dynamics, particularly with China, undergo a dramatic transformation. The social fabric of rural communities across the United States is being stretched to the breaking point, and the stress is palpable, a vice-like grip on the mental well-being of farmers nationwide. Anxiety, depression, and even suicide rates are spiking as these stewards of the land confront the ghosts of fluctuating markets and the specter of lost export relationships. The pressure to maintain the family legacy in the face of dwindling incomes has become a relentless burden, leaving many feeling isolated and hopeless. But the shockwaves don't stop there. As rural communities reel from economic downturns, the very fabric of social support systems begins to unravel. Local businesses, the lifeblood of these towns, suffer from reduced spending, leading to job losses that compound the existing stressors. Neighbors, once united by shared triumphs and tribulations, now find themselves scattered, forced to seek greener pastures in distant urban centers. The demographic shifts are equally unsettling. Young families, lured by the promise of more stable and diverse job opportunities, abandon the rural way of life, leaving behind a withering population. School closures and diminished local services become the new normal, further eroding the quality of life for those who remain. And as the aging farmer population surrenders to retirement, the mantle of stewardship falls upon shoulders that are often not ready to bear the weight. The traditional agricultural landscape, the backbone of rural America, begins to crumble, taking with it the cultural heritage that has defined these communities for generations. Shifting agricultural practices. As the political landscape evolved, so too did the strategies of American farmers and industry stakeholders. Empowered by political advocacy and supported by new policy implementations, the agricultural sector began to recalibrate and redefine its practices to align with both domestic needs and international market dynamics. Farmers once reliant on a singular export market diversified their production to include a wider range of crops suitable for various climates and market demands. This diversification approach was augmented by a renewed focus on sustainability, embracing environmentally friendly practices such as regenerative agriculture and organic farming became not only a response to consumer demand, but also a financial strategy offering potentially higher profit margins. In addition to changes in crop selection and farming practices, farmers looked to technological advancements to enhance productivity. Drones, precision agriculture tools, and data analytics became increasingly common on farms across the country. These technologies allowed farmers to optimize resource use, increase yields, and improve overall efficiency, vital steps in staying competitive in a global market that prized both quantity and quality. The political and strategic shifts that followed China's drastic reduction of U.S. agricultural imports underscore a watermark moment in the global agricultural landscape. While initially confronted with tremendous challenges, American agriculture has transitioned into a phase of adaptation and resilience. Political advocacy and strategic policy shifts have laid the groundwork for a more diversified and sustainable agricultural sector, a future where economic vigor aligns symbiotically with environmental sustainability. Community responses, technological integration, and the ready adaptability of farmers like Emily Carter and Carlos Mendoza reveal an industry capable not only of survival, but of thriving amid global pressures. As farmers and policymakers work hand in hand, the path ahead signals an opportunity-rich horizon defined by innovation and cooperation. Saving the heartland. As the tremors of global economic shifts reverberate through the American heartland, the onus falls upon policymakers to chart a bold new course that safeguards the future of our nation's agricultural communities. The stakes have never been higher, with the very fabric of rural life hanging in the balance. While federal aid and support programs can provide much-needed respite during times of crisis, these temporary measures merely scratch the surface of the underlying issues that have left farmers and their communities so vulnerable. The root causes lie in a deeply entrenched dependence on fickle global markets and the inherent volatility of commodity prices. The time has come to rethink the very foundation of American agricultural policy, moving beyond the limited scope of subsidies and emergency loans. What's needed is a comprehensive, long-term strategy that empowers farmers to break free from the shackles of market uncertainty and reclaim control over their livelihoods. Imagine a future where rural communities thrive, not merely survive, where the rhythms of the land are harmonized with the heartbeat of local economies, fostering a robust ecosystem of small businesses, community support networks, and thriving educational institutions. This is the promise that lies before us, if only we have the courage to reimagine the role of government in shaping the destiny of America's agricultural heartland. The path forward is not without its challenges, but the rewards are incalculable. By investing in innovative programs that foster diversified crop production, encourage sustainable farming practices, and strengthen regional food systems, we can empower farmers to break free from the whims of global trade. This in turn will create a ripple effect, revitalizing rural communities and preserving the rich cultural heritage that has defined the American countryside for generations. As we stand at this critical juncture, the choice before us is clear. Will we succumb to the forces of change, or will we rise to the occasion and forge a new, resilient future for the men and women who toil the soil and nurture the land? The future of America's heartland rests upon the decisions we make today, and the legacy we leave behind will echo through the ages.